Hello, I'm Brian Mckeon, treasurer of the Great Harvest of Souls for God. And today we'll be discussing one of my previous videos entitled Prayer Needed for the Global Economy. In it, we discussed an email sent to me by Cindy Jacobs encouraging us to pray for the global economy. She encouraged us to join her at the Federal Reserve and the New York Stock Exchange in a National Day of Prayer on Wednesday, October 29, 2008, the anniversary of the stock market crash. But upon further review, I noticed that she merely asked us to pray for the economy and not which direction she wanted stocks to move. So I asked, what was her motivation for planning her big event on the weekend after? On a convenient weekend. Why not on Wednesday? The anniversary of the event. Why was she planning her big event 2 days after on a convenient weekend? We also discussed a similar prophecy that I've received and how I got ready for it. And on October 13, 2008, the single biggest day in stock market history, how I went out and bought the following options and made over 90% that day. I also encouraged her to pick a side on which way she wanted stocks to move and showed you my current list that I was holding at that time. Now at this time I would like to make a small note on a typo that I had here. I would like you to note that for future reference. But overall, I was feeling pretty good about myself with a 90% gain. So let's see how Cindy Jacobs did. On October 29, 2008, the markets on average were down 0.5%. So overall, a relatively nothing day. So let's see what happens if you put the two of us side by side. Now, although I did not mean for my current holdings to be considered a buy list, some may have done so. If you would have bought the stocks that I had at that time, you would now be down on average 9.5%. But if you went out and simply bought the indexes at that time, you would only be down 1.5%. So if a prophet is judged by the results they get, you can clearly see that she is doing better than me. So what happened? Well, on October 20th, 2008, I encouraged her to pick a side on which way she wanted stocks to move. And on October 24th, on an appearance on CBN, she called us to pray for the stocks to move higher. And she changed her event to the 29th, the actual anniversary of the event, and not the weekend after. So overall, Cindy Jacobs was willing to listen to the small unknown prophet. Although I cannot prove that she watched my videos, I can see based on the demographic data that only women in her age group are watching these videos. So the question is, how did I turn a 90% winner into a 9% loser? And how did I take a prophecy that I spent so long getting ready for, that gave me the single biggest up day in history, and turned it into a loser? Well, on that day, I had $100,000 to put to work. And when God called me to do so, I was only willing to put $20,000 to work. I bought the following options like I was told, and was richly rewarded for that, with a blessing of an over 90% profit. But with the $80,000 I held back, a few days later I decided to listen to the richest and most successful investors out there. Although they are the smartest men out there, they are still just men. So with the $138,000 I then had, I went out and put $30,000 into options And in a relatively short period of time, I lost 90%. And with the 108,000 I had, I put it into stocks and lost 35% in the same amount of time. So overall, I am now down 27%. So at a time when God called me to give 100% and heed His words, I was only willing to give 20. At a time I was called to be either hot or cold, I was lukewarm. So I ask you, during this bonus season, to pray for the global economy. And send these videos out to your friends and family, encouraging them to pray for the economy. Now I know by personal experience, if you heed God's words, you can be richly rewarded for that. I would also like to make a special note to the businessmen out there. The Full Gospel Businessman was founded on testimony. And I would encourage business leaders to share their testimony on how God is working in their business. So again, this is Brian Mckeon, treasurer of the Great Harvest of Souls for God, saying thank you and God bless.